Hi everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this Master in Finance Alumni Interview. Good morning, good evening. Well, it's the evening where I am, and it's the morning for Miranda and Adam, who are joining us today. So this interview is looking at our alumni who are based in North America. You may have tuned in some of our previous interviews, and you'll see that this whole series is to take you through the different regions and aspects that have created our diverse MiF. So we're going to be going into the interview, and we're joined by Miranda Jenkins from the class of 2018. Miranda will be interviewing Adam Morris, who graduated from the class of 2004. So Adam's based in New York at the moment, and Miranda in Arizona. We'll have about 30 minutes for this interview, and then we'll go to a Q&A. So this is an opportunity for you to ask Adam and Miranda questions about their experience in the MiF, their careers since, some advice that they may have. So don't hold back, you can put that in the chat function. But yeah, enjoy. So I'm going to hand over to you, Miranda.
Perfect, thank you. Great to be here. I really enjoyed my MiF experience. So as I've been introduced, I'm Miranda Jenkins. I was a MiF part-time 2018 student. My current place that I live is in the US, but I'm also an American. And my professional background before the MiF was I was working in management and strategy for Goldman Sachs and their long-short equity hedge fund and private equity vehicle. And I had joined the MiF really just to gain that additional knowledge and expertise to grow my career. After that, I actually moved into working with AQR at a quantitative hedge fund. And now I've landed post-COVID back in sunny Arizona. I'm a COO of a management consulting firm focused on the financial services industry. And Adam, I think your background is very interesting, and I would love you to just introduce yourself so people have a little bit of a flavor of who you are.
Hi, everybody, and Miranda, thanks for the handoff. It gives me great pleasure to speak with you today. I'm so excited that there are so many people on the line considering a Master's in Finance at London Business School. It really was a life-changing event for me, and we can go into that in a little bit more detail. But just by way of background, my name's Adam Morris. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan, based in New York. You can tell I'm British. I came over here partway through my career with JP Morgan. I graduated from London School of Economics with a degree in international relations and economics back in the mid-90s. I was a management consultant for about 9-10 years. And then I decided that although my background was consulting with financial services firms, as Miranda is doing now, that I actually wanted to work as a front office banker of some form in a financial services firm. So I went and did the Masters in Finance at London Business School, graduated 2004, and soon after joined JP Morgan. And so as you can tell, you can do the math, lots of quants on the line, that's 16 years. And I've done a bunch of different things. I started off in research in London, and I was writing macroeconomic research and marketing that to European fund managers and hedge fund managers. I did that for a few years. I then moved to New York just before the financial crisis. I ran an equity derivatives marketing trading desk for a few years. Then I went on and I became a portfolio manager and trader working directly with ultra high net worth individuals, so private bank clients. And then for the last 5 years or so, I've actually been a private banker. So my job right now is to manage the relationship and find and manage a relationship with individuals, their families, and their entities, their family entities, for people who typically have a net worth of $100 million or more. So a bunch of them, including some billionaires, and I help them manage their overall intent for wealth, what they want to do with that money that they have created and that vast fortune that they have at their disposal, what they want to do with that, how that's managed, succession planning, trust and estates work, international work associated with all of that and all of the wonderful ins and outs of that whole world, which I'm sure you can imagine is extremely interesting. So I've been doing that for the last 5 years.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's actually a very good background to kind of move into our next question, which I think most of the people on this call are going to be interested in is, Adam, why did you decide to get a MiF? And then specifically, why LBS? And I know you touched a bit on it through your career journey, but it'd be really helpful to kind of walk us through your decision process.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Miranda. So by the time I was choosing to do a postgraduate degree, I had been a management consultant for 9 years, 10 years. And so my job had been restructuring businesses, doing corporate strategy, doing operational strategy, change management, and all of the ins and outs of how to actually run a business. And I felt I had a fairly good grounding in understanding of broad management from that experience. That's not to say I wouldn't have benefited from an MBA. I love the idea of that, but I felt I really wanted to zero in on building a skill set, a specific skill set. And what I felt was with 10 years of being a management consultant that I knew a huge amount about a lot of different industries. And I really wanted to zero in on one functional, specific, deep understanding. And instead of doing an MBA, which would be kind of a good survey of all business topics, I wanted to go really deep on finance and be thought of as a subject matter expert. And that's really what the Masters in Finance did for me. It allowed me to seamlessly change career within a sort of narrow range of finance related jobs, but to do that with credibility. And it's been an incredible asset to me in terms of my everyday authority and understanding of my sector since I've had the degree, and I really do use it all the time.
Perfect. I think that answers probably one of the key questions that even I grappled with was why a MiF versus an MBA is for that specialization. Now, I know I looked at various schools within Europe. Was there a specific reason why you chose LBS instead of maybe some of the other programs?
It's really straightforward. So London Business School has, whilst the MBA is almost a generic qualification in which there's probably 15 or 20 amazing schools globally where if you get that MBA, it gives you a grounding that is phenomenal for going on with your career if you want that broad business education. There's some slight differences between the schools, but really broadly, you'll come out with a great body of knowledge that's similar between the schools. What I would say is that the London Business School Masters in Finance is a unique program. You get an education that is very difficult to find anywhere else in terms of a program. So there's definitely Masters in Finance, or there's Masters in Science, there's MSCs with a specialism in finance at other schools, and they're venerable academic institutions. But when you look at the curriculum for those other schools, which some of them are the best business schools in the world, when you actually look at the curriculum, you find it has a particular bias. It's very, very quantitative. So many of them are actually really math degrees which happen to be applied to finance. Some of them have a particular focus on them. What the Masters in Finance at London Business School I could see does is that it gives you extremely deep knowledge in the mechanics and the understanding of finance, but it works on establishing the fundamentals and the building blocks of finance so that you understand how the whole of the machine works, both in terms of economics and the application of economics to financial markets through finance. And so the combination of those building blocks of a fundamental understanding of finance plus the mechanics of the mathematics around it, if that's really interesting to you, combined together is extremely powerful. And that is unique at London Business School. I really genuinely do not believe that there is a program at any other school globally that has the same nature in terms of the way that the program was designed. the program was designed back in the early 90s, so they've had decades to actually perfect it, and they've continued to build the curriculum so that it is addressing current financial issues from those first principles, which is so valuable. Now, I'll say one thing more, Miranda, in answering this question. Why do you care about that? Like, why is that important? It's fundamental. So by its very nature, finance is an innovative industry. We are continuously seeking to find new ways to efficiently allocate capital. And that's what's so exciting. To me, it's such an exciting industry because money itself is, and economics is an ephemeral concept. It doesn't exist in reality. We choose to believe in money. We choose to believe in finance for the smooth workings of our society. And therefore, as you have this ephemeral concept, that means gives you incredible ability to very quickly innovate, right? So you don't need to invent a new item. You can create it in your mind, and then if you can apply it within an investment bank or a hedge fund or any of the institutions where you go and work after the MiF. And so that innovation is so exciting, and the exciting part of my career. So why? It is vital to understand the fundamental building blocks of finance, because the financial world, when the people on this call are in the position where they're leading financial services firms 20 years from now, will look completely different from the way that it looks now. And if you have those fundamental building blocks that the Masters in Finance at London Business School give you, you can just rearrange them to understand the new scenario, whether that's one that's being driven by fintech or financial innovation like securitization, which I lived through during the 90s and the 2000s, whether it's any other innovation that's going to be coming down the pike over the course of the next decade.
Thank you. Actually, I think keying on some of those points is really important, because I really couldn't agree more. I think the London Business School MiF program is very unique, and all of the other master's programs that I was looking for in and around London or Europe just wasn't giving that type of building blocks, as well as their faculty and alumni network that LBS promotes. Kind of moving into something a little bit more fun, are there any highlights or fond memories of the Masters in Finance program at LBS that you'd kind of be able to share with this audience?
God, I'm hesitant to go down the path of sounding like a super nerd, and so forgive me if I do this. So firstly,
That's
for
okay.
me, you can probably tell from my enthusiasm, I actually find finance and economics fundamentally fascinating as a subject itself, as an academic subject. And it was spending a year in the company of 110, 120 other people who were equally as intellectually interested in the subject, being taught by people who were masters of understanding how this intricate machine fits together on a global basis. And on top of that, it was an extremely collegial environment in which we were all working together as a team to improve one another's understanding of this incredible subject. And to me, that whole process was a wonderful thing to go through, and just to be able to step out of a career for a year and to spend that time going back into an academic setting, but one that I knew was going to be immediately applied to my job after I graduated, was such a treat. And it's just a wonderful thing to be able to do mid-career. And the MiFs do tend to be, the Masters in Finance, we're known as MiFs. The MiFs do tend to be a little bit older than MBAs. They tend to be later 20s or early 30s, even sometimes occasionally in their 40s. And that ability to take a breather from the career and focus on academics again is really, really exciting. The final thing I'd say is I was already married before I went on the MiF, but there were quite a number of couplings that happened during it. I'm not suggesting that that's a guaranteed outcome from this. You won't find Mr. or Mrs. MiF on the program, but it did happen more than once. And I think we're sat in the company of someone where that's the case.
That is true, Adam. I met my husband during the MiF, and he was sat right next to me during the first day of class. So, and we actually have another couple from our class that got married as well. So you can get your master's in finance and your Mr. or Mrs. degree as well, if that suits your fancy. Now, I know I was part-time, so I think the challenges leading into the MiF were a little bit different for a part-time versus a full-time. For me, it was really ensuring that I was getting the academics as well as the social and networking experiences with LBS while also doing my job. Adam, can you kind of explain what your challenges were in the full-time program and kind of how you approach those?
Absolutely. So one of the benefits and one of the challenges of the Masters in Finance full-time is that it's a one-year program. So for me, it was a benefit. I was right around the age 30, and to taking out 2 years from my career to do a postgraduate, an MBA was had a huge opportunity cost for me in terms of lose a year of career and lose a year of income. And so I was really attracted by that 1 year program component of it. But don't think that you're not doing a full master's degree in 1 year, right? So the challenge of it was that it was completely consuming in a great way of my time, my thoughts, the intellectual capacity that I had, my focus. I chose to do it 100%, and I jumped in both feet and dedicated, almost all of my time during that year, knowing it was just going to be a year, to gaining as much as I could from the degree. To some degree, you are putting the rest of life on hold whilst you do that. So that's part of the challenge associated with it. But for everyone on the phone, they're already successful individuals who are choosing to take a step out of their already successful career. I would advocate you probably want to take the approach where you're just really focusing on achieving as much as you can in the time that you dedicate to this. And so if you come in with that attitude, I think you get the most out of the degree. I take my hat off to there were people on our program who actually had children during the course of the degree. Many of the spouses on the program did say that they felt a little bit like they were MiF widows. They occasionally saw their spouse on the Friday night or in between events, but for that relatively short period of time, it's an amazing experience.
Definitely. I feel like our class also had that, to where you're trying to dive all the way in to the experience, and sometimes with that, you just have to remember that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and you're paying for this experience to be around like-minded individuals that stretch you. And that's one of the key benefits to the program. So moving on a little bit differently, and when you were talking about the MiF and why the MiF, I think you did hit on this, but I just wanted you to expand a little bit more on how the MiF impacted your career directly after the program, and then how you've been able to, through your various moves, which I think are probably career aspirations for a lot of the people on the call, on how the MiF helped you through those role changes.
Absolutely. So the Master in Finance gave me the credibility to move from being a management consultant into being a hardcore finance person. And the first couple jobs that I had were pretty technical jobs in the world of finance. And so I don't think that would have been possible just as a leap from being a management consultant saying, please believe me, I can do this. Having the Masters in Finance gave me that legitimacy. What I found, so just by way of a little bit of additional background, my client base that I cover, so I mentioned I'm a private banker, my clients are CEOs and founders of mutual fund companies, hedge funds, fintech companies. So most of my clients have themselves built huge financial services firms in the asset management industry. So what the Masters in Finance allows me to do now is to face off against household name hedge fund managers in giving them advice about how to manage their money. And they listen to me. And these people are not shy and retiring. As you know, you worked in a hedge fund at Goldman Sachs. They challenge you. They want to know, like, does this guy or this girl know their stuff? And so they ask you tough questions. They have an intellectual framework about how they approach finance. If you can spar with them, if you can meet them as an equal in terms of the intellectual rigor and understanding of finance, that is such a huge advantage in building relationships, which is my primary job, building relationships with these types of individuals. So the Masters in Finance, as I've already said, gives you those principles and those fundamental building blocks. That means whoever you're talking to, whether there's somebody who manages a massive real estate business as real estate as an investment, or whether you're talking to a hedge fund manager who's equity long short, or a macro manager, or a systematic trader, or whether you're talking to a corporate financier, you have the ability to put together the pieces of the finance puzzle to have an intelligent and informed conversation. The final thing I'll say on this is that as you all, after a few years of being graduated from London Business School, are managing the businesses yourself, and you get the opportunity to manage parts of asset management firms, or you are talking to people about restructuring their business as a corporate financier, those building blocks of finance are so vital in understanding how to advise them best, or how to value a security. And so that is another key component to the puzzle.
Perfect. And I think if you could elaborate on a class or a learning experience at LBS that particularly sticks in your mind as that has helped you in the future, or that you just gained so much knowledge from that you could just give that to the audience, I think would be helpful.
Yeah. It's a great question. These questions were not on our prep question session so I have to think about these ones, but they're good ones. I mean, I think the experience for me was, I have a little bit of math in my background, but not a lot. I did not do an engineering degree or astrophysics or chemistry or anything like that, right? And so the experience of there's a lot of work you do individually on your own, but there's also a lot of work you do in groups. And the experience of sitting with somebody who was literally, we had a professor of astrophysics who decided he wanted to do a degree in finance, who was in our class, with that person who understood the mathematics intuitively. It was a bit like that. Do you remember that A Beautiful Mind, the film where I think Russell Crowe plays a mathematician? You can see all the pieces of an equation coming together. Like, it was clear that this guy could do the math behind finance in that way. I couldn't do that. I struggled through the equations and it was a grind for me. But I said, I'm so sorry you're having to sit with me and help me through some of this more difficult stuff. By the way, it's not all math. Don't worry about it. For those of you on the phone who are not big math geeks, there's a component of it. But and I sat with them and I said, I'm so sorry that you have to kind of help guide me through this. And their reaction was amazing, actually. Their reaction was like, no, you bring other qualities to our team in terms of your intuitive understanding of how we should approach this. That's different. I can do the math, the math is not a problem, but actually understanding intuitively how we should tackle this valuation of this sort of difficult asset that we're trying to do a deal around, that's really, really useful. And so I think there's one component which is there's definitely the singular process of learning a subject. There's another which is how what value you can bring to a team that's tackling a corporate finance question, a big M&A deal, or a trading question, how to structure a very difficult hedging strategy for a corporate. and you will learn what you can bring that's unique to the team, that's different. So that's one component. I would say there's a second component, which is something that lives on after the MiF massively for me, which is, I talked about understanding all of these fundamentals and getting a feel and a sense. You get this sort of sense for finance, right? So that now what happens when I'm look at a financial transaction, when I look at a security, when I look at a derivative, when I'm thinking about the pricing of that, the risk profile, I'm thinking about how the value of this changes over time. As I do that, I just have this kind of almost like inbuilt sixth sense about what makes sense and what doesn't, right? And that comes from the MiF and then the application of the Masters in Finance afterwards, such that I have had team members bring me pricing associated with a security when I ran a trading desk or when I ran a marketing desk. And they'll be saying, like, we price this up, the trader's done this, this, and this. This is what it's going to cost to hedge this asset, or this is what it's going to cost to get to buy an option on this asset. And I've just gone, there is just something wrong here. That does not feel right. The decay of it over time doesn't feel right. I can't understand why you would come to that. And then we've gone back and we found it's been completely mispriced, right? That the trader just got this is a technical term, I'm sure you know, like the vol curve they just had it in the wrong place. And they had gotten the wrong security in Bloomberg, they typed it up, something had gone wrong. And that kind of intuitive sense of how finance works is so useful once you're working in the business afterwards, to sense check and to understand how products should be working in our world.
Perfect. No, that was actually very helpful. I think the learning in the classes is just something that every person, depending on what background you have, you're going to be able to meet people within your class to help you grow you in aspects that maybe you're not an expert in, and then also move you forward into growing your strengths, and you can help your classmates with that.
I think that we've just lost Adam. I think he's dropped out, but oh, he's back again.
Perfect. I will just roll right into my next question then. Welcome back, Adam. So I think with my experience with the MiF especially, and I know mine's more recent than yours, Adam, but I loved the community of faculty, alumni, as well as my class, which we're now alumni, and what we built within the community at LBS, which is why I'm sure you agree to do these types of events with LBS. So I just wanted to understand, how have you been a part of the LBS community, and in North America specifically, how has the community expanded here?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? I'm sorry, I think I had an internet issue. Great, perfect. So there's another difference between the Masters in Finance and an MBA program or other degree programs, and that is it's very small, right? So average class size, I think, is 100 or 120 people for full-time, and then about the same, I think, for part-time. I'm sure that we can give you the exact numbers. You can see that. So the community is really small. And so that means we're pretty tightly knit. We keep in touch over a long period of time. If your whole community of your year is only 100 people, you are tracking people's success and their developments, what they've been doing, the businesses they've been starting, the businesses they've gone on to run after their career, which is really, really exciting. There's a great sense of community around that. And then also because, you look at Harvard, which is a wonderful school, but they graduate something like 600-700 MBAs. I don't actually know the number, but I'm guessing it's around multiple hundreds of MBAs every year. And so that community is vast and enormous. And ours feels a little bit more curated, a little bit more intimate. There is a good network of people in New York, and we keep in touch and see each other every 6 months or so when we were able to do that. And indeed, when there has been business opportunities of being able to connect people who have gone on to amazing disparate things around the world. So I think of my class, there's one that's running a sovereign wealth fund. There's obviously being in our community, there's got to be about 5 or 6 that are running hedge funds, if not more. There's a bunch who are actually, interestingly, running the corporate finance functions or CFOs of large corporations. And so keeping in touch with all of those folks and understanding what they're doing has been a really valuable part of the community, and we've enjoyed staying in touch over the years. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how, it's been a while since I immediately graduated. So what has it meant to you in terms of community in the couple of years since you graduated, Miranda?
Yes. Well, first, if you don't mind rotating your video, so we don't have to. Perfect. That now it looks great. I think that the community for me, I mean, we were a class of 66 students in our part-time, and you kind of explained it earlier that it ranged from people in their late 20s mostly into their early 40s, and all walks of life. Some of us just wanting to grow our careers in a certain area, others looking to do a complete switch into something a bit more technical, or a different type of investing role that they were currently in. And the community, we stay in touch. We still have a WhatsApp group. There's still active chats going on. And before I moved from London, we were getting together a couple times a week, just whoever could make it. I was a social rep for my class, so maybe I'm more socially engaged with my fellow classmates. But we were just, and I feel like it's just something with the smaller classroom sizes that you are able to create those connections with a lot more of your classmates than if you did join a program that had over 200, 300 or more classmates, to where you need to then join smaller groups to be able to get that type of close-knit experience. And I've also run into people within my career that were alumni of, or new alumni of the LBS program, and that makes an immediate connection with you, to where you have something to talk about, which has been really beneficial, and I think a great thing for my career. One of the last questions, and I think everyone's going to want to know, is, do you have any advice for somebody that wants to apply for the MiF or they're thinking about joining, giving them some advice, just anyone, but also specifically if they are maybe thinking of joining from New York or another area and relocating to London? I know you did the opposite in your career.
Yeah, I think so. I really hope by the time that the people on this call are joining the Masters in Finance program, I really hope that you can do it back in person. I think the school has been doing an amazing job integrating the both in-person and virtual teaching, and I commend them for doing that. I hope by the time you all are able to be at the Masters in Finance, you can be there in person. The actual, so the school is beautiful. It's in an incredible area of London. If I'm sure many of you have been there and know it, but it's in beautiful buildings. It's got a lovely atmosphere. It's extremely open and collegial, as you'll imagine. And so it's just a nice experience for a year to go and study in a beautiful place. Plus, you're in London, which still, hopefully, God willing, is a premier financial center out after New York globally, and is really still the center of international finance. And so I think the advice is, like, hopefully you love and are excited about the idea of both living in London and experiencing London as well as that. And so I would suggest trying to get the most out of being in London, if you're coming from elsewhere, as you possibly can, as well as going and doing the program itself. I think, look, I'm probably painting a picture that's very rosy and sounds amazing. But I think there is an aspect of the Masters in Finance where you have to have a genuine interest in finance. Like, I don't think you can fake it. I think you might think that if you're not genuinely interested in the subject, you probably won't enjoy the experience of the Masters in Finance. And so before I even thought about applying for the Masters in Finance, I was kind of my own volition. I was the first thing I would enjoy doing at the weekend was reading the finance and economics section of The Economist. I read books about finance, more popular fiction. I loved Liar's Poker. I loved all of the Barbarians of the Gates books, and would be like, oh, I was actually more interested in how they were structuring the deal than I was in the narrative. And so there's got to be a little bit of that. You've got to have a little bit of passion for the. So my advice is like self-reflect and make sure that is actually something that's interesting to you. The admissions people at London Business School will be looking for that. And I think that they do try and interview most candidates, if not all. And they'll be really asking you, like, what do you find interesting? What excites you about this subject? And so that's something they're going to be looking for. If some of you are looking at using the Masters in Finance maybe to do a career change, I did that. Okay, then I think as much as you can be doing research prior to arriving at the Masters in Finance about where you might want to go to. So maybe you want to get into a hedge fund, or you want to be doing trading, or maybe you are a trader and you want to do more corporate finance, or you're a corporate treasurer and you want to go across into an investment bank. What if you know what the shift is that you want to make? That may means that you can use the 12 months you're at London Business School to make the connections. Because the other thing I would say is it has an incredible alumni and expert network. So whilst you're there, you will have the opportunity to meet the head of, the head of corporate finance, or the head of investment banking at Goldman Sachs. They will come and do a guest lecture. You will have the opportunity to speak to partners at KKR or at Oxif, as it used to be called, Sculptor now. You will have the opportunity to talk to experts and leaders in our field, fintech leaders in our field. So you want to have an idea about how you're going to use that access ahead of time. So it's not a problem if you have absolutely no idea when you arrive, but you'll have a second job as well as the MiF, which is figuring out what you want to do post MiF at the same time. So my advice is do a little bit of research about what you might want this to help you pivot your career to as you arrive at the school.
Thanks, Adam. And actually, I mean, I'll just say I had no interest in pivoting my career, and then ended up pivoting my career soon after the MiF, and through AQR's connection with London Business School. That's how I made my jump from Goldman into the quantitative hedge fund. So career changes definitely are something that people want to do when they join the MiF, like Adam, but then also some people are just doing it to grow your understanding, and both are fine. And I even had friends that thought that they were going to go be an equity investment analyst for a hedge fund, and ended up figuring out that they like systematic investing more after speaking with our fellow students and taking classes. So there's lots of interesting options there that the school has to offer.
Miranda, I will say that the job hunt experience is different than an MBA fundamentally. So for a large chunk of MBAs, they have that summer in between the 2 years. And for the majority, what will happen is in the first year of your MBA, you're getting an internship for the summer. And whether that's going to be, at Goldman Sachs or at JP Morgan, like myself, or at Disney, if you wanted to go into entertainment, or any one of a number of different industries, you will then take that internship during the MBA summer, and then in all likelihood, you'll get offered a full-time job when you graduate from the MBA. So generally what happens is that is formulaic. You come into those organizations at a specific level. There's no wiggle room up or down around that. You come in, for instance, in banking, you'll come in as an associate within a big financial institution. The MiF is very, very different. So typically they're hiring specific roles out of the MiF, not generalist roles where you'll come into an investment bank as a generalist and you'll be trained further. Often with the MiF, you will actually be hired for specific roles, whether it's on a trading desk or in a particular sector coverage from an investment bank. And so it's a different experience of hiring, and you will be talking with people who are probably looking just to hire one single person within their group through the recruitment process. So I'll pause there and that's it. I think this is a useful topic. And Miranda, did you have anything you want to add on that? Because you have a more recent experience.
No, I think that's very true. Where I've seen most of the people within my class switch careers and even with me or get a different job that was in the same type of career path, it was specifically they were at an event, at a speaking and introduced themselves to the people that were coming from Goldman Sachs or from another hedge fund or bank and made that connection. And when that person was looking to hire, they were on the list. Or through the Career Center, there's one posting for a job that then you're applying to actually be able to join the company for. I think that is the majority. Now there are internship options and things like that, but it is not as formulaic as, okay, now you have your MBA, you're going to come in as an associate and you have 2 years before you get promoted within the bank. It's just a little bit different, and I think in a good way. So Lucy, I'm not sure if we should move naturally into the Q&A that I'm sure have been flooding in from the audience.
Yeah, no, well, first I want to say thank you so much that